And we are officially on. Ow, ow.
Yay.
Yay.
Woo.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, y'all.
Welcome to Book Witches with the Bee, Season
I'm
4,
Colleen.
Episode 2. Oh, yeah.
Yes. Do you know if you want to say our names? Do you want to say our
I'm
names?
Ordra.
We haven't done this in a minute. We're a little rusty.
We're a little rusty. Last weekend, Colleen had a wedding to go to for one of her dear
Yeah,
friends.
it's a gorgeous wedding. It's a good
Congratulations,
time.
Xander.
Xander, you're probably not listening, but if you do, we love you.
Yes, we do. And I had my parents and my grandma visit last week, so it was a little bit of a crazy time, but very fun for the most part. My grandma did fall. She is okay. I am not okay.
Terrifying, truly.
It was absolutely terrifying,
Yeah,
but that's okay. She's fine, and that's all that matters. Um,
good.
so yeah, we're going to be talking about chapters 4 through 6 of Blood Over Bright Haven by ML Wang this time. And I'm really excited. This is I think this might be my favorite part of the book. It's
Hmm.
very montagey.
It is very montage. It's like, yeah, like cutscenes. Like in a movie, this would just be like a cutscene that they were just
Yeah,
kind of going through. Yeah,
very much so.
it's very
Um,
fun.
so shall we get going then to chapter
Absolutely.
recap?
Absolutely.
Chapter recap.
Whoop whoop.
Okay. So, as I had said in the first episode, I am going to read the little excerpts in front of each chapter, and each chapter has a name, which is really fun. So I'll definitely give that as well. All right. Witches, beasts, and all manner of wicked beings massed in their thousands in the basin that was to be Tiran, and great was our fear. But Lord Leon went before his mages and spake thusly: Do not fear the forces of darkness, for God, who promised us this land, is with us, and his will is light. When you go against the tribes of the enemy, hold your staff before you as a torch, and watch the unclean fall to the light of truth. The Tiracid, Trials, verse 109, 56 of Tiran. Chapter 4, Just a Joke. Okay. So it's Sciona's first day as a high mage, and Aunt Winnie is fussing, wanting Sciona to present herself in the best possible light to be attractive to the powerful men that Sciona will be working with. Sciona thinks this is ridiculous, as she will not be focused on romance, but she lets her aunt fuss and Alba fuss a little bit longer before she leaves. On her way to the train station, Ansel, the baker's son who had baked the scones in our previous episode, runs up to congratulate her, and Siona is also asked by a little girl who lives in the neighborhood for the signature on her school book. Siona promises her one better to have an archmage sign a book and, kind of goes along. By the time Siona has actually reached the train station, she almost misses her train because of the number of people in her neighborhood stopping her to congratulate her. It's very sweet. When she's on the train, she also kind of gets a few, like, oh, is that, like, whispers and stuff. When she gets to the High Magistry's Magicenter, Sciona realizes that she doesn't know where her office will be. She passes a Quen janitor who offers to help her find her way, and they run into a group of Sciona's new colleagues. Clen Renthorn, a former colleague of hers when she worked in Bringham's lab, Urith Tarnell, Farian Halaros, and Jaren Mordra, the young man who did poorly in his exam but with a legacy. They discuss the reality that all of them will be working for Renthorn once the initial presentation of their research into border expansion is presented, as he is the best there is, to which Sciona takes offense internally. The group of mages then realize and discuss that Sciona has not been assigned an assistant, and then declare that the Quen janitor, Tommy, can be her assistant as he still hasn't left her side. I have a little excerpt to read here. This section of chapters also, while my favorite because it's very montagey, is also like extremely like hard-hitting. It's pretty
Yeah.
bad. It's pretty bad. Okay.
There is a
Hey,
lot of
Blighter.
social things in this.
Sorry, say
Yes,
that
yeah.
again.
Oh, I was just saying there is a lot of like social stuff in this, so if that is something you're
Yes.
sensitive to, this book is not for you.
Not for you.
definitely.
All right. So
Yes, yeah.
it's so they're like basically thinking it like they're making jabs at her about like what's worse, like making her work by herself or making a research mage work under a woman, which like don't even get me started. And then they realize that the Quen janitor is still there. And they say, "Hey, Blighter." Sciona winced at the word, which had always seemed an awful thing to call the people from beyond the barrier. Even if they had brought blight on themselves, it was a shade too cruel for her taste. Okay.
Ouch.
Unwilling to let them know that they've gotten to her, Sciona decides to hire Tommy after all as her assistant, and he begins to unpack her things. Later, when Sciona has to go to the second floor of the Magic Center to use the restroom because there's no women's restroom on her floor, she runs into Renthorn on her way back through the library. And he lets her know that he knows the only reason she was hired is because she basically slept her way to the top, which is obviously not true. And he's like, "We all know that you did it. Like, it's so shameful." And she's like, "I absolutely did not. I earned my place here." Filled with an understandable rage, Sciona bursts back into her office and tells Tommy to stop organizing. They have work to do. She is determined to beat him out, which, yeah, I'm determined for her. Which brings us to chapter 5. God has set me forth the above to be known as the forbidden coordinates. Mages, have caution, for to gaze on the fruits of these coordinates within the coil is to walk a dark path, and to siphon therefrom is certain and eternal damnation. So says Farron, all-knowing. The Leonid, Magical Laws, verse 45 of Tiran. Chapter 5, Just a Drink. Sciona begins to teach Tommy about the basics that he'll need to be her assistant, going in depth about the spellograph, the religion and the history behind everything, their purpose, why they are doing what they're doing, why they are where they are, and the basics of spellcrafting. I want to talk more about this in the deep dive, and I have an excerpt to read about it, so we'll touch base on that later. Sciona demonstrates a spell for Tommy, explaining the theory and logic behind it, and being pleasantly surprised at how well Tommy is grasping the concepts for a Quen. Yikes. They talk briefly about the West Bend Bridge incident where a former high mage used a sourcing spell incorrectly and brought down a bridge, and Tommy informs Sciona that 2 Quen men were killed, though it was not reported. Sciona swears she would never be so reckless with magic. At the end of the day, she is basically like she like sees her colleagues ask Jaren Mordra out for a drink. They're like, "Oh, it's tradition to take the new high mage out for a drink," and then they look pointedly at her and walk away. And Tommy, bless his heart, is like, "Well, um, would you want to go for a drink?" And there's this moment where she's like, I think she's like, it's like not his place to look out for her like that. And it's also like kind of like a step down for her to be going out for a drink with him, but she like thinks about this and she's like, "You know what? I do deserve a drink. How about let's go. You buy yourself one, I'll buy myself one, and let's just go celebrate. I do deserve this. Thank you." So they're like trying to decide which bar to go to, and she's like, "Well, if we go to this one that all of my colleagues are going to be at, it's going to be embarrassing for both of us." So she's like, "Let's go to this bar that's a well-known like Quen owned and run bar." And he's like, "Are you sure?" And she's like, "I'm from the wrong side of the tracks. Like, yeah, I've drunk there before. It's fine. Let's go." So they go, and the bartender is like, he calls her Maedra and is like, "The rest of the drinks for you and your friends are on me." And she's like, "What did he call me?" And Tommy's basically like, "Oh, it's a nice word. It's like a woman mage. It's the Quen word for woman mage. And it's like a sign of respect. Like everyone is really excited that this is happening." And she's like, "Oh, whatever." Um, cut to Siona's like, "I always prided myself on being able to handle my liquor, especially because I could like put other men down. Drinking with the Quen is a different experience." She's like pretty drunk. Tommy is like, "Yeah,
Correct.
whatever. It's all good." Um, and so he's like, "I should walk you home. Like, you shouldn't go home alone." And she was like, "I'm fine." At this point, she's like pretty drunk and she's like kind of on him. She's like holding on
She's
to
on
him
top
and
of him.
she's like
Yeah.
smelling his like soap and herb scent and yes, talking a lot about his hands and like how rough they are.
She's really into his hands. You can tell this
She's
book was written by a woman.
yeah.
Like, truly. Yeah.
Super into his hands. And then she's like, "Don't worry, I told you it's all about power, not what you look like. I have bombs." Like they're not bombs, but they're kind of bombs that
She
she
has
carries
bombs.
around for safety. And so one of them, like, if you press it, it'll like put out smoke so that you can get away, and one of them is like a firearm, essentially, that if you press
Hmm.
the button, it will hurt someone. Um,
Hmm.
and Tommy is like, "Oh, let's not touch those right now," and she's like, "I'm not gonna hurt ya." And
And he's like, uh-huh.
she's like, "Okay." So he like gets her back to her room. She's staying at the university. He gets her back to her room and she's like, "You should come in." And he's like, "Not gonna do that." And then she's like, "Well, you should at least call me Sciona instead of High Mage Freynan." And he's like, "Okay, well, you can call me Tom Hill. That's my actual name."
And she's like, what? What do you mean?
And here, friends, is where our tragic hero from the first chapter, Tamil, comes back into play. So we don't know. Again, we assume like probably a couple, like a decade and a half, or maybe 2 decades have passed since that has happened. But he's just, he's a janitor working in the Magia Center and crosses paths with Sciona. And here's where their stories meet. And oh, the things they are going to do together. Whew.
Yeah.
Ooh, which brings us to chapter 6. The Quen were cursed and living in the darkness when Lord Prophet Leon freed the basin from their control. In his mercy, Leon offered unto their surviving leaders a way out of the darkness. Instead, they turned away and sealed their curse in perpetuity when they refused the true God. Now, when the wretched descendants of these tribes enter Tiran, they do so as half souls, tainted by the folly of their forebears. It is our duty as tyrannish to make these wretches whole through re education and offer unto them every opportunity to redeem their souls through labor. Though, in his savagery, the Quen shows little gratitude, to civilize him is the moral obligation of all tyrannish as the chosen of God. The Tiricid Conduct, verse 43, 56 of Tiran. Chapter 6, Suited to Serve. So Siona wakes up pretty early in the morning and she's like, oh gosh, like she's super hungover. She is super hungover at this point. And she's like, but
She would
she's
be, yes.
like,
Yeah.
yeah. And she is just thinking, like, oh my goodness, like she has a friend. And she thinks about the fact that like getting into like the upper echelons of society usually means having friends to go with that new status. However, her only friend that she's ever made seems to be a Quen janitor, and she thinks about like kind of the comedy of that, but she is really excited that she has a friend. Super
She is very
excited.
excited. I relate deeply.
Yeah. So she gets up and gets to work, and Tomo comes in a couple of hours later and is like, she's like, Tomo, you're here. And he's like, you're awake. And she's like, well, yeah, I've been up for hours. And he's like, I can come back if you want. And says, no, it's okay. Like, we have a lot of work to do. Let's go. And he's kind of like, I thought you'd be asleep and hungover at the very least. And she's
Mhm.
like, there's a tea for that. And she points to the 5 cups of hangover tea that she's had since she woke up in the morning.
My
And
favorite interaction.
yeah, it's so funny. And he's like, oh, okay. She's like, why aren't you hungover? And he's like, oh, well, because I'm a Quen.
We don't do that.
So she sets about getting to work and she's like, hey, you should put on this coat and like make it official. You're my assistant. And he's like, few things. Am I allowed to? Also, what about, the fact that I don't have a university education? Like, what's the legality of this? Because I'm going to be in trouble regardless of what you say, especially because you're a woman. um,
Yeah.
he doesn't say it. He's too much of a gentleman to and he's too much of a good guy to like think like that, but he knows the realities of the situation. And she basically
Mhm.
is like, "Well, I've gone over it. I've gone over the policies and stuff. You are allowed to be here. I can't pay you as much as if you were like a research assistant who's gone through the university, but you can be here. I can pay you. Let's get to work." And they're talking about it, and he is like learning a little bit more about stuff. They're talking about it, and then she's like, let's try a spell. Let's try a sourcing spell." And they're going through it, and she tells him to pick like any coordinates, and he picks one at random, and she's like, "That's a dead spot." And he's kind of surprised that she knows this, and she's like, "Once you do this for years, your mental map gets pretty detailed." So then he picks another spot that happens to be in the center of the map, and she's like, "Ah, that's another thing we can't do within the center of the map of the other realm. It's like forbidden coordinates as mandated by religion. So we just can't do it. It's like a reserve that will kick in when other power sources go out. So it's forbidden to source from there. They talk about this one high mage, the only high mage, archmage to ever be executed, held by trial before God and executed for using dark magic. He basically sourced power from within the forbidden coordinates to kill his colleagues. And while they're talking about this, basically Brigham knocks on the door. Tamil like quiets down and immediately jumps away and like stops being familiar with her. And she wonders at it, but it's like whatever. She's really excited to see Brigham and be like, "Look at me, I'm a high mage." And he's really excited for her as well. They're discussing it. He is trying to like get her out of having Tamil as an assistant. And he says some things that are like, you know, not great, but Sciona is basically like, "No, like I want him to be my assistant. He is great." Brigham eventually warms to the idea. He's like, "Oh yeah, you don't want any other mages because they'll just get in your way. This is perfect for you." He's a big proponent of feminism in this world as well. He like hires women to work in his labs and factories and stuff like that, and he's like really been a big proponent of pushing Sciona forward as well. So he's like, "Okay, well, I'm glad to see that you're doing well. I just wanted to check on you. Don't let the other people get you down." And he leaves. We also find out in this time that Sciona is, she's so ridiculous. She doesn't like gifts that are frivolous. And so Brigham got her this like beautiful, elaborate clock that's actually a countdown clock to the number of days that they have before their research is due. So this clock is like this beautiful, elaborate countdown clock. Like, "Oh, you better have your work done by the time I get to 0," which is I thought was hilarious. Um,
Mhm.
and so Bringham's like, "Well, you have a lot of work to do, so I'll leave you to it." And he leaves. And Siona and Tom Hill get back to work and continue to talk. So while they're going through, she's basically having all of these things like, "Oh, wow, like you're smart for a Quinn. You get these concepts, like you're really getting them." And they talk a little bit more about the history and stuff. And it comes to light that like for Quen, if they can't work, they're not allowed to live. And Tamil is extremely serious when he says this. And Siona is like, "Oh, it's no wonder that you guys are known for being melodramatic. Like, of course that's not true." It's like one of like the that like made me flinch when I read that. Even the
Well,
second time.
especially knowing what I mean, it's we already knew that because of the beginning. They almost threw him and his niece back
Yeah.
out of the blight. So
Yeah.
like we have
Exactly.
definitive proof. This isn't like him, like we know that he's not being dramatic. We know that he is being serious.
Yeah, we know he's being serious. And so
Yeah.
they kind of like shy away from it because they're like, "Well, we have work to do." And
Yeah.
um as they're going, Tamil is basically like, "You said you would be no good as a teaching mage. You said, you know, you would never want to do that. But like I beg to differ. You're teaching me very well. You're doing a really good job." And Sayana realizes, she's like, "Well, it's never mattered. The outcome of the learning has never mattered to me before. But if you don't learn, then we can't do our work. So it really matters to me that you like actually understand what's happening." And so it ends on a positive note, you know. And that's where our chapter recap comes to an end. You want to go into section superlatives first?
We can.
Cool. Okay, drama queen of the segment.
So it's gonna always be Sciona. So I feel like
Not
that's a running
Sciona.
theme.
I want to say Renthorn.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
He's just like such a misogynistic pig who like cannot take the fact that a woman has made it.
We've met a few of those. Yeah.
Hmm.
The worst. Yeah, I think I was thinking of with Sciona, her like she was intoxicated, but her just like weird obsession with the way he smells in general. She's just like, which
Soap
it's a
and
racist
herbs.
thing. It's the point. She's like, well, they're known not to wash, and I'm like, clearly he does.
Yeah, yikes.
Yikes. But yes, no, Rinthorn is something else. I think I actively forget that he exists in these books because I don't like him.
That was fair. He's the worst.
He is the worst.
Um, Craziest thing to happen.
I mean, Tamil being her assistant, I would say that's pretty crazy in context of the world and
Of
of
the
the book.
world, yes. But what I thought was crazier was the whole "I have a firearm."
Yeah, surprise bomb that I made and just carry around casually.
Casual. She's like, "I thought I invented it. I was 14, whatever."
That might be the most melodramatic thing she's done. It's just being like, I was 14, it's fine.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's
bless her
fair.
heart.
Um, cool. All right, Colleen. Perfect time for
It's
you
me
to
time.
take it away. Colleen's Corner.
My corner. Okay. I was debating back and forth on different things to talk about for this section. I'm gonna lightly touch on this topic and state off of the bat that I am not an expert in this topic, but I did grow up in Oklahoma and I took a class on this. But especially at the beginning of the section for chapter 6, I think this is intentional, but the Quinn are essentially being treated how the US government treated Native Americans in the US. Again, not an expert. I am, as far as I know, not native, but I am from Oklahoma, where a lot of the natives got moved, and I did take a like Native American history class in high school, so I think I have some context. But particularly when the topic of like we tried to save their souls, and then when they didn't accept it, we re-educated them. I don't think they have this in the books, but like in context of Native Americans, not only in US but also in Canada. Fun fact, Canada actually sometimes is worse than us, and this is the one thing they're worse on. They treated their natives horrifically. Um, but they put children in re-education camps. Essentially, they would take them away from their families, put them in schools, usually Catholic schools, to be honest, not always, but some sort of religious school. Would not allow them to speak their native languages. They really couldn't interact with each other. They were taught to be white, essentially, and to assimilate into white culture because their culture was vulgar and dirty, and the like dirty element of that is definitely very much prevalent in that. Um, so yeah, it's very clearly a parallel. I think it's intentional by the
So
author.
I do believe that there are camps. I don't think I agree, very intentional. I
Yeah,
think it's camps for like newly arrived
yeah, to
people where
teach them how
they,
to behave.
yeah. And then they
Yeah,
have this, like, they have preachers on the radio, and they have um religious texts in like a quote unquote dumbed down version.
for the Quinn.
Siona's
Yeah,
words, not mine.
Well, I mean, that's what she's been taught. So I think that's the thing that's really interesting about this. Like, to even give even like more context, they talk about being civilized to them in Oklahoma. So Oklahoma has native people. There were native people there, but the native people that are currently there are because they lived in Southeast United States, and we forced them to move to Oklahoma. That was Indian territory. That's literally what they called it. And the tribes that they moved are literally called, like, this is what we call them in Oklahoma, are the 5 civilized tribes. There were 5 of them that they moved, and they called them the civilized tribes because they moved them and then civilized them. Like, that's still currently how they're addressed. Like, this is not like a. It's very relevant and very current.
Yeah.
Um, I don't like that term. I never liked that term even when it was like used. But that was the 5. There are 5 main. There's other ones too. They were the ones that signed the rolls. There was a whole thing when they moved them. Some signed the rolls and some didn't, and that now affects funding for different Native tribes. It's all very complicated. Please go read more than my rambling about this. If you would like to learn, there are some great Native authors and people that definitely have a well more in depth. But if you could tell I was making faces during when you were reading that section. That was why, because I hate it. 1, it's very racist, and 2, it was definitely very much paralleling something that happened in US history.
Yeah, no, I agree. And even just like the thought of like the wording of it specifically, where it's like it's our duty to civilize them. It's
Mhm.
in the chapter excerpt before, like chapter 5, where they're like, "Oh, like don't worry." It's like it's kind of like manifest destiny almost, where it's
Yes,
like
westward expansion.
we were we were given this mission by God to take this
Mhm.
land and make it good from like the people who are, again, this is words from the book. I feel horrible saying this, but like quote unquote unclean, like,
Yeah, that's the point. This book is it's one long, at least maybe because I am a white woman and Sciona is a white woman. It is one long looking at how you interact with things, and no matter like if you think you're doing the right thing, you probably are equally doing something as awful to another person. Even if you like you're like, I've been treated really badly by people. But she cannot tell that she is treating Tommel poorly.
yeah. So let's bring in, we talked about this in the last Colleen's Corner. I'm just hijacking it. I'm sorry.
No, please hijack.
Let's
Please do.
talk about why don't we bring in intersectionality to this?
We yes. This is really where this starts ringing in. This is this is what happens when you're not intersectional. There's a reason that people bring it up, and particularly people of color often will bring it up and within feminism context, which again, we gave our definition of feminism earlier. If you need that, go back to the first episode. I know definitions can get confusing, but um it is really, really easy, and historically white women have done this, which is why this has been brought up, where you're so focused on fighting for the rights for people that look like you and people that are you that you are so blind and don't understand what is happening to other people of either a different gender or a different sex, depending. Um, and it can make you look silly. Like Sayona looks silly in a lot of this. Like she looks, how do I put it? And that's like a weird way to put it, but she looks uneducated. She's like, I'm the most educated person in this room. I'm
Yeah.
so smart. She's really not in a lot of ways in the way that she approaches
She's
people and the way that she
extremely
talks to him.
ignorant. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
extremely ignorant. And I think that I mean, it's not up to him. And I love the way that this book is written. It's not up to him,
Mhm.
but he sees something in her that he understands intersectionality. Let's just put it that way.
Very much.
Oppression
Yeah.
is an intersectional inter-issue thing. It's not just, you can't divide it out into boxes and say this is its own separate issue. Racism and sexism go really hand in hand, especially where they overlap for populations. And he understands
Right.
that. And so
Hmm.
he is trying to be like, he sees something in her maybe where he's like, well, it's worth it trying to talk to her because she is also facing her own form of oppression. And then
Hmm.
we see that go pretty poorly. Sciona dismisses him immediately.
Frequently. I do think there's this element, and I'm sure from like a Tamil perspective of he's like, and I do think from Siona's perspective, she thinks she's treating him better than most people do, and she
Mhm.
is, sadly.
Yeah.
Like she
Yes.
is still it's not even microaggressions at this point. It's very much aggressively telling him that he's dumb and that he smells and that he's, she even the concept of her being like, I guess I have to go out with a janitor, like classism. She's like,
Mhm.
I'm poor, very clearly classist.
Yeah.
Even with that, like it's just she's so, which is a running theme. She's so focused on her own ambition and which her cousin called her out for in the very first chapter. She's like, you don't care about women, you care about yourself and what it means for you. So like don't pretend that you're doing this for all women. You're doing this for you under the guise of doing it for all women.
Yeah.
I like Sciona, but she is very blind to a
Mhm.
lot of things. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Colleen. I appreciate that. I reading this just like we've talked about this reading just to read, even for book club, very
Mhm.
different from reading it for the podcast. Like I was getting the like overtly I was getting the parallels and like the overtly like Christian um missionary like the mission and like the converting what is the thing I'm thinking of? Basically
Colonization?
like when Christianity was like a conquering force. I'm getting very much that theme
They
from
call
it.
they colonized it. It's the
Thank
British.
you.
It's the British thing
It's
where
the
they
British
colonized it and
colonizing.
then
Yes.
forced the natives. Like they forced them to convert. It wasn't like a truly like we want to share this thing that we think is a gift with you. It's
Yeah,
no,
no,
you
no,
are
no. It
wrong. You're a
was by
heathen. You're
force.
forced to convert.
Yeah. And I'm not
Yes.
saying,
Yeah.
and I think it's really important to state because I do make a lot of statements about Christianity as a Hindu person. I am not against Christianity or Christian people, clearly. Clearly not.
I am
Um,
one. It's
we
part of
just
yeah.
like
So
if we ever read a book on like Hindu aggression, I'll be all over that. Like it exists as well. I just like, talking about this stuff in this context for this book is just going to be a
mhm.
huge part of it. So please don't hate me. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to our audience. I know you don't hate me.
I don't hate you at all. No, I mean, as someone who is a practicing Christian, that is also part of what makes this book very infuriating. This book as a white female Christian is a journey. I will be honest. It is
Yeah.
something that like it made me really reevaluate. And I am someone who actively tries to evaluate my interactions with people and tries, but I know I've messed up. What knows? But like I do try, but like this book really makes you like have to sit in it. And even
Mhm.
if it's just like not only your racial interactions, but your class interactions, your interactions with your family, like all of it is in this
All
book.
of it. Yeah.
It like I have not reread this since I did not reread this for book club because it kind of sent me into a spiral
Mhm.
after the first time I read it. And so like I'm only reading it in chunks for the podcast so I don't do that again.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
which is what made it good. The author was very good at forcing you to look at the things that you may or may not be doing wrong, which I really
Yes.
like.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
incredible. Um, okay. Well, let's head on over to deep dive then.
Deep dive.
Deep dive
Woohoo.
discussion. A lot of stuff to unpack here.
Whew. Yeah.
A lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff and a lot of like character interactions. Like
Yeah.
we've seen a lot of Sciona. I don't this is where we really get into like Sciona and the world at large, I think.
Yeah. Oh, so talking about Christianity and how that's very much I would say that's very much like the blueprint for um the religion that the Tiranish follow. We
Yeah.
find out that there's
Yes.
two different sects of this religion,
Mhm.
which do we have a name for this religion?
Tirish. I think it's just
Tirish. It's
Tirish.
just Tirish.
Because they live in a theocracy, so like
Yeah,
religion and government are the same
they're the same thing. Yeah.
in this. So
Um,
I think it's just the Tirish religion. I don't know if they have like a particular overarching name.
yeah. Okay, so they're talking about the expansion, which we definitely need to get into that as well. They're talking about the
Yes.
border expansion, which is necessary for a number of things, which we'll touch on shortly. And Sciona is basically asking Tomo, like, what do you know about it? And he says only what the preachers say on the radio in the Square Man. And she says, Leonite or Tirasan preachers. And he says,
Mm.
I'm not sure that I know the difference. And Sciona at first is like, yeah, right. And then she realizes Tomo really doesn't know the difference. And
Yeah.
so here's what she says. While Leonites subscribed to the texts Leon himself wrote during his life, the actual founding texts, Tirasans lump in everything an increasingly senile Fane the First wrote about Leon's intentions. So I take it you're a Leonite, ma'am? And she says, I know it's unusual for a mage, but don't judge me. I was raised on the wrong side of the tracks. Which, what?
Yeah.
Um, and so basically, we find out that for the Quen, it's Leonite preachers. Tirasan preachers usually call the other realm the bounty and reference God creating it for the mage's use rather than just opening it. However, um, the Leonites call it a garden, and
Mhm.
it already existed before. It wasn't created. It was a sacred thing that already existed that a door was opened to them by God.
To be allowed to use. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I thought that that was really interesting. I think that I just like the ability not only to create such a complex world, but she literally wrote a religion with different sects. Like the world building in this book is outstanding, unbelievable.
It's very good. You don't, there's not really any way that you feel out of place in it. You're just kind of there and
Yeah.
existing. And she is good about introducing it in a way that, like, you don't feel dumb for not knowing it previously or that, like, you have to
Yeah.
scramble to figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah. So the two different sects are going to become important as the story goes on because there are things in place because the High Mages follow the Fane, the Tirasan sect of the religion. And so they have rules and stuff in place written by Fane the First, who who wasn't the person who created the religion, essentially. And whereas Sciona and Tamil, he doesn't subscribe to it, but they
Yeah.
fall on the Leonite side, which means that there's stuff that could become loopholes. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
It's not as structured, maybe.
Yeah,
There's a lot less structure to it
yeah.
compared to the rich people religion.
Would that be in any way similar to Old Testament, New Testament, or
Well, so I was trying to decide because it could be, so I was trying to decide because it's one religion. In theory, if they are only following the Old Testament, then they would be similar to like a more of a Jewish person,
yeah?
more of a Jewish religion, and then the later letters in like Paul and other things, which is more in the New Testament Christian realm,
Mm-hmm.
could be the new one. So I don't know. I think she's maybe combining a little bit of both, but there's definitely more. I mean, technically both have the same root. You could also, depending, have it where it's Christianity and then the more um like the second prophet kind of thing could also be similar to Islam. So I think it depends.
Interesting.
Um because they're all the same root religion, they're all Abrahamic religions, but
Yeah.
where I mean it's loosely based, so I think it is her own, but
Mm-hmm.
it could be any of those combinations, I think.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Super cool. So yeah, I thought that that was cool. Do you want to talk
Yeah.
about the expansion?
Ooh, this it's a very looming part that is like weirdly just kind of sprinkled in the beginning that becomes such a larger thing
Yeah.
later in the book. I think at this point you're just kind of like, oh, just working on like a research project, but like it's a big.
It's a big
They're
thing and
running
it
out of
has
space.
yeah, they're
Yeah.
running out of space. Tiran is like I mean, it's basically like Manhattan where
No.
it's an island. It's not a physical
Mhm.
island, but it's an island in a sea of blight, and they have nowhere out to expand, so they've just been expanding up. And so it's like the New York of like the is it the
Mhm.
20s I'm thinking of, with like the tenements and the all of that
Very
stuff.
much the, like, turn of the century, Industrial Revolution
Yeah,
kind of vibes. This is very much like a it's steampunky. This
it
book is
is
very
steampunky.
steampunk-esque,
Yeah.
and so it's kind of like Victorian, turn of the century, industrial, like
Yeah,
skyscrapers, bad working conditions, all of that New Yorky stuff, but in this. Yeah,
but in this. And so they are they blame it on the Quen, which is also horrifying.
because they populate like bunnies, which is related to the Irish thing. Fun
Yeah.
fact, that was literally something that they said about the Irish.
Yeah.
So, just
Very, very strong ties there.
yeah.
So they need to basically what they are trying to do is expand the borders of the magical barrier, which has literally never been done before
Because they don't know how,
because they
which
don't know
is
how.
such a wild thing. They're like, "Oh yeah, well, it was the how it was done is destroyed. We don't know how."
Yeah.
What do you mean? What do
So
you mean by
the
that?
research that Sciona has been hired to work on this team of researchers she's on the sourcing team. So not only do they have to figure out the actual spell to expand the borders, they also need to figure out how to source enough energy to push the borders out and sustain it. This is where like the coding logic part of the spell of like the magic system comes in. It's like
Mhm.
very methodical and logical. They have to come up with the spell to have the parameters of expanding the boundary, and then they need to source enough magic to do it while also figuring out how the spell needs to be written so that they can sustain this indefinitely forever.
Mhm.
And that's like the casual thing that they just sprinkle in that they're talking about.
It does feel like but I guess maybe to them it's supposed to be casual because like I think this is something that's been talked about for a long time and they're like, "Hey, we're going to do it now." Like
Yeah.
we've been wanting to do this. It's getting to a critical point. We're going to do it now. Like
Yeah.
I'm going to put you on it and figure it out.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's so Siona's big gamble with like the humongous cauldron. Like that's literally why she was hired. She sourced so much magic, like way more and way more accurately than anyone's ever done before, and that's why Brigham was able to be like, well, we need her.
Yeah, we need well, I think they are understanding that for this project that no one else has been able to do, maybe they should look at someone that is not like anyone else that they've had before
Yeah.
and see if they can do it.
And there's a lot of feelings about it.
A lot of very fragile male feelings. Not all men are fragile. The men in this book are very fragile. They
Super
have fragile
fragile.
male feelings.
Yeah.
They do.
Yep.
Outside of Tommel, I would his feelings are not. He's one of the examples of not. He has a lot of emotions and he is emotional,
But
but
it's
he's not
not
fragile.
toxic or fragile. Yeah.
Correct. They're different.
They're different. I
Yes.
don't know if you guys can tell, we love Tamil.
He honestly, him and the baker are tied for my favorite man in
Oh,
this. I love
yes.
that baker. I love
Me
the baker. I would have
too.
married. I know that Sciona just that's just not something that she's interested in, and that's totally okay. Would have married that baker boy in a heartbeat.
I
He's
know.
adorable.
He's so
I love
sweet.
him.
He's
Also,
so
a man that
sweet.
can bake goods for me.
Yeah,
Easy,
yes, please. Yes, please.
easy, yes.
Do you want to talk about Siona's character development in this section?
We can. What do you mean
I'll
specifically by that?
I'll expand. So we go from the
Okay.
first section where Alba's like, you don't even know the baker's son's name, and he brings you scones and he looks at you like
Mm-hmm.
you're like the best thing ever. And she holds that mirror up to Siona and is like, you don't care about people.
Yeah.
She tries really hard to change that in these next three chapters, and she thinks a
She
lot about it.
she does. She is self-aware enough to understand. So some of this, when I reread this, I was trying to figure out if if it was some sort of like she's like if it was her being thoughtless or if she was like maybe somewhere on the spectrum, or if it's a little bit of both. I'm
I think
thinking it's supposed to be a little bit of
both.
both
Yeah.
because I do think there is an element of thoughtlessness, but I
Mhm.
don't think it's natural for her. Like I think she has to put like she was saying like for my cousins, love is natural for them. My cousin and my aunt, they think of people and love all the time. Honestly, sounds exhausting. She's like that's just not how my brain is wired or is to function. So I think it's like she
Mhm.
has to try like a lot harder.
Yeah. I would agree.
Yeah,
And she does. Like she actively
she
took
does.
that feedback and like she remembers
Hmm.
Ansel's name. She tries to remember the little girl's name and like
Yeah.
she doesn't remember about her promise, but Tomil does. And she's like, "Oh yeah. I can't believe Tomil remembered that I promised this girl that I would get a signature, but he did." And so like, he's
Hmm.
like, and then everything about him, the way that she thinks about everyone else, very different
Hmm.
from the way she thinks about Tomo. She remembers the
True.
details about him. She's
Hmm.
interested in knowing about him.
Well, he's like a new research project. He's
Exactly.
a new
He's just,
he's a new entity to her. He's
yeah,
interesting. He's interesting
yeah.
enough to be like, "Who are you?
Yeah,
You're intriguing."
especially, and it's not because he is Quen, it is because he is Quen and is also completely different from everything that she thought she knew about them.
Correct. He's treating her differently. She's learning that he's not what she thought they were. She's just kind of like, "Oh." I will give her some credit of in general, outside of the one time she laughs him off. If she learns new information, she's like, "Cool, great," and moves forward. She doesn't really dwell on it. She's
Yeah,
just like, "Cool, changing routes."
yeah. And then, like, to the meaty part, why I love this chapters. I love these chapters so much. It's just like seeing them interact, and they go so in depth about the magic and the history and like the culture of everything. Like, it's just so fascinating to me.
It's a really good way to do a lore dump that
Hmm.
doesn't feel forced in the story. It
Yeah,
feels like there's an active reason why she's doing it, and it's informing us along with Tamil, essentially, in the process, which is nice.
it is really nice. I agree. Um, okay.
So, when we saw Bring Up, something that I noticed on the first read, and I have more context now, but I'm not going to spoil it. I did think Tamil's reaction to him was interesting. I don't
Ooh,
know
yeah.
why, but Tommel very much was like, because so the Brigham comes in and he's like, this like happy-go-lucky Sciona like clearly looks up to him. It's her mentor. Tommel is very guarded,
Hmm.
very uncomfortable, very nervous. Could also just be it's a white male in power, and he's definitely not a part of that power structure. Um, but like when they leave, so we learn that Brigham is big in textiles. He does all of the textile like so we learned that Brigham produces every textile. Like there's no monopoly laws apparently in this world. He does all of it. He does and part of the reason I think that's why he employs as many women as he does. It's kind of considered like a women's field. Um and Tomo goes, "Oh no, I know. I courted a woman who worked for Brigham."
That's right.
And so that's when Santa goes into like, "Oh yeah, like he's really proud of hiring women and all of this stuff." And Tomo's just like, "Mhm." And like his reaction to her talk, like his reaction versus her reaction are very different, and we don't know why. It may not be anything, he may just feel uncomfortable, but I think that is something to keep in mind and to note because I think there is Lee Tommel has a different perspective. He's going to have a different perspective on things that Siona does not have and won't she just hasn't had the experience to have it. um and so I think making sure we pay attention to Tommel's reactions and interactions with people, I think will reveal a lot about how the world as a whole is built, similar to Siona's reactions, but in a different way.
Yeah, no,
So,
I agree. I think that's a really good point. And just kind of piggybacking off of that,
mhm.
talking about how obsessed she is with his hands, this comment also sends her into like a whole spiral about like, oh, he's a man. That's right. Um,
I find her interesting. So this book is not. this, I mean, kind of spoiler, I guess. This is not a romance book. Like, there's not really romance in this book, but I do think that Sciona notices that people are attractive, like objectively attractive. I don't necessarily know if she's attracted to them, but she's like, oh, he
I
has
don't
nice
know,
hands. Like
going on
Tommel
and
has.
on about his hands. That's
She has this weird. Well, she like is fixated on the fact that he has really calloused hands. She's like, I've never shook someone's hand that's so calloused. Like she like can't get over it. Like she's just like, what is that? What is that like? How did you get there? Which like I understand. A calloused hand can feel nice, but there's this like thing in her mind where it's like she just maybe experiencing attraction for the first time in her life. I don't necessarily know if it's sexual or not necessarily. It's just like it's something. She's just like, you are like an enigma. Like I've never met someone with like I'm sure all the men she's interacted with are, the soft-hand academic types or whatever. She's just like, I've never interacted with a guy like you. This is really new to me. Her journey with that is really interesting. But
yeah,
yeah, no, she does focus a lot on his
a
hands.
lot
Like
on his hands.
obsessively in these couple
And
chapters.
the way that he smells too, and then she's like, "Oh, he's a man," and then she's like this whole like, "Oh, well, I won't think about him that way because Aunt Winnie would lose it if she knew that I was."
Yeah.
But like, she is kind of thinking of him all of a sudden before she can help herself.
Well, she's like, he probably is considered attractive. Like she just like can't she's just like, maybe? Is that how this works?
Yeah,
She just seems perplexed by it.
it's a whole spiral, which
Um,
I thought was like pretty funny.
it is very funny.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be honest, he sounds pretty handsome. He sounds great. I love a ginger. We know this.
and
This is a running
he's like
theme.
a big, strong man too.
He's a big old, just a, yeah. Anywho, in my mind, he's just a big Scottish ginger man. I don't know if that's how he's supposed to be written. That's how I picture him.
And that's how I picture him too. Side note, I had a dream about Hosier last night.
If we've talked about this yet on this podcast, I am obsessed with Hosier. I will be seeing him for the 5th time this summer.
I'll
I
be
love
seeing him
him.
for the second time, and it is also the second time I'm seeing him with Colleen.
Uh, I tend to bring people to there has been multiple people where I have brought them to his concert and like I don't know how to explain this to people and I've done this multiple times. I'm like he's truly is the best live performer I have ever seen. I go to concerts pretty frequently. He is by far the best. And everyone's like, "Oh, okay, yeah." And I'm like, I know you don't get it now, but you will." And then I look at them when he starts singing and the look on their faces is just
I about died. Like, I was like, oh my God.
and I didn't shut up about it. And like I knew that Origin knew that it was gonna be something.
I was
She was
still
still
not
unprepared.
prepared. Yeah.
He genuinely sounds better live than he does recorded. I don't know what they do to his voice recorded. It sounds different. Not completely different, but there's a warmth that's missing
Yeah. No, I
um
agree.
from it and I am obsessed with him. I
This
love him.
man who I had a dream about him last night. And I think it's because I was thinking about the fact that we're going to be going to see him in a month. It's happening in a little over a month. And
It is,
I was
yes.
just like, Hosier in my dreams. I even knew that it was supposed to be him, and I was like, does not hold a candle to the real man. Like in my dream, some sort of like conscious part of me was like, but this isn't even close.
Like it's not the real thing. It's not even we're gonna be actually sitting pretty close to the stage.
I
Like
am
way
so
closer than we were at your
excited.
concert.
I'm so excited.
I've done Pit for him one time. The first time I saw no, second time. I saw him a long time ago. And then the second time I saw him, I stood Pit and it was an experience.
Yeah.
We do have seats because we're old. But
Correct.
we are very close.
My husband's
Yeah.
turning 40 this year, so old man needs a seat.
Honestly, it's better. I've sat in both. Seats are nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that
But yeah,
man.
I thought you would enjoy that, and just yeah, he there's he doesn't relate to
Honestly,
this book like at all, but if we were still reading like a romantasy fae book, I think that we should have cast him as someone. Like cast him as Cassian. He would need to be a little bit more muscular for Cassian though. That's the only
yeah, he
thing.
would be. I think if we made Hosier a ginger, he could be Tommel
I
easily.
I don't think you're wrong about that. Maybe so. Yeah.
He's just not a ginger. Technically, the person that I think of as Tamil is Tormund from Game of Thrones,
Oh my God, I love that man.
who is my favorite character in Game of Thrones. I love his like I love big women. He is my favorite person in that whole series. Um, yeah, I don't know who Hosier would be if we were casting him. Did you have an idea? You seem like you had an idea.
I was thinking of Rune Dannon, even though I know canonically Rune Dannon is supposed to be dark-skinned, but still.
Ron Dannon is my favorite Sarah J. Maas character.
Oh,
I love him. Honestly, in some ways, that would fit. I think he has the build of Rune Dannon
that's what I was
more than
thinking. And the hair. He
people
just
would say
needs to shave
Asriel.
one
He is not
side.
Asriel. I don't think.
I don't think so
Honestly,
either.
again, if he was a ginger, I think he could be Lucian.
He could be Lucian.
I think he would make a good Lucian if he was just a ginger. I don't think
Hosier.
it would be.
Hosier.
Again, I know
I think
canonically
Hosier,
supposed
I
to be
think you
slightly
need to
darker
dye your
skinned.
hair ginger.
That would make him even more Irish. Well, not really. A lot of Irish people have dark hair,
Yeah.
but more stereotypically Irish.
Mm-hmm.
He is a fae person embodied.
He is.
Yeah.
He most
I agree.
certainly is. That man is magical,
He casts a
ethereal.
spell
He
when he
casts,
sings. Like I have
yes.
never heard a stadium as silent as when a man sings a ballad than when he does. Like when he starts,
Yeah.
it's dead silent. Everyone's just like, what? What's happening?
Yes.
Anywho, what I'm saying is go see a Hosier show. He is somewhat touring in the US right now if it's not sold out. I think he's doing a tour. He tours a lot in Europe. He's European. Makes sense?
Yeah.
Go see him. Highly recommend.
Yes.
It is worth the ticket price. I
Even
promise.
if you don't know his songs. Because, like, I knew, like, two when I saw him the first time, and it was so worth it.
It is.
I knew Take
If
Me
you're
to
someone who
Church
likes music,
and the new one. Oh, God.
she's sweet.
Yeah.
I know a lot of them. I am not
I know a
his
lot more now.
I'm not his biggest fan, but I'm his biggest fan that I think is normal. Is a good way to put that. Like I have a
Yeah.
normal amount. Like his music I listen to pretty frequently. I somewhat keep up with what he's doing. That's about it. I'm a grown woman. I'm not gonna obsess over every part of his life.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, I thought you would enjoy that. I thought our audience would also enjoy that.
No, our audience loves Hosier.
Yeah.
That's
Hosier, we love
look,
you. I know you're
look,
never gonna see this, but we love you.
no, don't say that. No, we're gonna become famous and somehow he's gonna see it and we're gonna meet him and I'm gonna cry. I'm sorry, Hosier, I will cry a little bit. I
It's
don't know
okay.
how to handle my emotions.
It's okay.
Yeah,
It's
so no,
okay.
we will meet him someday
We
when we're
will.
famous podcasters.
Yeah.
Also, tidbit, this is slightly off topic, but not completely because it's podcast related. They have added to the Oscars a best podcast category, which means
What?
we could
We
technically
could
win an
win an
Oscar,
Oscar.
which would be insane. I feel like maybe we don't quite count to what they're going for at the
What do
Oscars.
you mean?
Well, like this, I don't know if you ever listened to the Serial podcast. Like that's probably closer to what they're thinking of. Like that podcast deserves an Oscar in itself. But I think we should be up for it. We
I
have a
think so
podcast.
too. We have
We're
an
eligible.
average of 10 listeners,
Hey, that's more than I thought we had.
up
I'll
from
take that.
3, so
Come on. Boop, boop, boop. We're getting
um
there. Growing an audience.
anyways, let's bring it back and then I think we can probably wrap it up.
Oh yeah, actually
Final
need to
thoughts on
listen, so
this
that's good.
segment of chapters.
Um, this is the lighthearted section. Essentially. Like, with as heavy as the section is, this is the lighthearted part. Um, it was good, it's great, it's informative, but it definitely just gets a lot sadder.
It does get a lot sadder. So prepare yourselves. The stakes get so high. They're already
They do.
high. And they just get like, whew.
The more we learn about the Quinn and how they interact within Tirish society is really interesting. I'm excited to like get into that. But these sections I
Yeah.
love. Yeah, that's what I have.
Yeah, awesome. I am really excited to go from here. Um, I will say that I think this section of chapters, the first time I read it, was when I texted you and I was like, is this the thing? And I figured out like the looming big thing, big secret that we're not supposed to know. I was like, this is the thing.
I think you most people reading it, I don't think it's supposed to be hidden.
Yeah.
I think it's supposed to be obvious. So if you guess in the comments. Guess in the comments
Yeah.
what you think it is.
Guess in the comments what you think the thing is. But it's still devastating when you find out. So just like be ready, steel yourselves, prepare. We're doing it 3 chapters at a time for a reason.
We need to take it in. Yeah,
Yeah.
too much would be overwhelming. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So
this book is great. We are very excited.
we are. All right, everyone. Have a good week, and we will see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.